Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. It's Thursday already. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined by John Paul Mason on today of all days. JP, we did it. We did it.
We did it, indeed. Before we say anything, I want to issue a full and frank apology to the word onomatopoeia for using it incorrectly last week. Serves me right for veering away from wordplay, which was the word that was in my head, but sometimes when you're live on a camera, you maybe cherry pick a different word, and that was the wrong word.
How dare you? How dare you appear on a show for 5 years? For 5 years, how dare you choose the wrong word? It's like Callum McGregor misplacing a pass. JP, you lit the guy away with it.
Yeah, I also want to issue an apology to Rio Hatate for
let's start with Rio then.
Doubting his abilities, his prowess, his hunger, and the rest of it. I said to the guys that sit behind me, I've sat with the same people now behind me for, well, as long as I've had my season ticket, which is the season after the Barcelona season when I was like, right, I'm not getting a ticket for a home game at Celtic Park or having to look for favours ever again. So fortunately last night I was there without having to beg, borrow or steal or anything because it was my season card. But I said to them last night, I was like, I want an 8 out of 10 from Rio Hatate today. This is just before the huddle. And I said, it's non-negotiable. I want an 8 out of 10 from Rio Hatate. And I think he more than gave us that. And yes, you can say quality opposition. They were a limited team. I wouldn't say they were a poor team. They were a limited team. I think that's a fairer way to say to talk about them rather than say they were a poor team, because a limited team like that were capable, but for a couple of Schmeichel saves, for potentially nicking 3 points against us, which would have been hugely unjust, but it could have happened. But the pass from Hatate that led to the goal was absolutely unbelievable. And doesn't matter, you've got to play with what's in front of you. And at that point in the game, we're just looking for anything at that point. There was the will from the stands to cheer the team on, as was commented by Brendan Rodgers afterwards, as was commented by a few people as well. I can't remember who I listened to. I think it was BBC were saying there's not many grounds where you get that kind of absolute passion from a support to will a team on. Might have been.
I think Casper was asked about it. He was asked about it after the game by Joe Hart as well.
Was he?
So maybe he's mentioned it during the game.
Possibly, yeah. I've tried to inhale as much of the post match as I could last night and this morning before coming on. But Hatate, I've been critical of, and I think with good reason. You know, I don't think he's been at it for a lot of the games. Whether that's because he's got his head out the door or whatever, I don't know. But last night we needed it from everybody in the park, and that first half in particular was, I mean, but for some finite decisions. I mean, the first Kyogo offside is minimal. The Maeda one, fair enough. The Callum McGregor foul, okay, when you see it back, you're at the ground, you don't know what's happened. But in terms of how we wanted the team to apply themselves in the first half, you couldn't have asked for more. It was just an absolute travesty that we weren't at least a goal with the good. And then obviously the penalty that can happen just shows the pressure. You know, the pressure can get to you. Idah and Engels has put away penalties for us quite calmly, but then when suddenly you've got the weight of expectation of a sold out Celtic Park, a Champions League qualifier that means everything to the club and to the support. It's not been done for 12 years. All of that's probably running through his head. You'd hope it wouldn't be, but aye, that I just wanted to say that about Hatate, because I know that I've been a bit kind of off on him. Maybe not always on here, but certainly to friends and stuff like that, I've been like, I'm done with him and all this sort of stuff. So
the thing with that is, we'll speak about Hatate and Engels, but starting off with Engels, you mentioned it. Maybe it'll put to bed, JP, people saying all he does is score penalties. Last night showed you the importance of being able to score a penalty, because he missed the penalty, and you've seen how that affected potentially the outcome not only of the game, but of sitting here this morning having only gained a point, maybe less, because you missed, you know. And the thing with that, the thing with that, who only scores penalties, it's a nonsense. It really is a nonsense. And I've not dug into the data in terms of past completion rates, duels won, etc., etc. But the eye test last night, I'm watching Engels, very, very mature performance by him.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you know, in terms of the starting 11, he's in the strongest one for me as it stands. People's form can dip, etc. I think the one player who'll be feeling a wee bit hard done by at the moment is maybe Bernardo. He's not had a great deal of game time, and he's not played particularly badly, but he's not a first pick at the minute. But flipping back onto Hatate, like, you know, on here, you kind of tempered my enthusiasm in the early days of Rio Hatate because there was an immediate buzz around the player, JP, you remember, and you were saying, you know, hold your guns a wee bit here, because he has shown it. Has he shown it consistently? Well, he hasn't this season. And the games, for example, against Rangers, where they dismantled us at Ibrox, his ball retention was terrible. It was dreadful. There's no getting away from it. He gave away the ball far too often. You go to the game away in Croatia, and again, ball retention was really, really poor across the side. So last night he's come out and you're saying, I want at least an 8. It's non-negotiable. What did we get from him, in your view? Did you get an 8? Did you maybe even get a 9?
I don't really think you can say at a 1-0 victory that players are getting 9s. I thought Callum McGregor in the first half.
First half.
Yeah, possibly first half, but then the game's 90 minutes and we had to endure a fair amount of heartache and fear in that second half of what may happen, because as I said to you before we came on air, we've seen that game many times at Celtic Park where we are by far and away the better team. We've battered the team, maybe not had 3 goals disallowed. I mean, it's like you said last night in the halftime analysis, has anyone ever scored a hat-trick in European football and then had it denied? No, the game is 90 minutes and you've got to do it across the whole spell. In the second half, I don't know if it was just a case of we went down to their level. Guy in front of me, pal Mark, was saying, you know, it's turning into a bit of a juniors game here, just the way that it was fragmented. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe about the 75th towards the 80th minute that we actually put passes together. You know, that kind of combination that goes to Carter Vickers back to Johnston out wide. Bernardo comes on, makes a difference, gives energy in that side of the park. Of course, Idah as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about him, given we talked about him last week. And I obviously delighted for him. But I think there was a lot of 9s in the first half, and they maybe balanced out to 7, 8s in the second. But I'd say 8 out of 10 for the whole game. If you're being completely honest, without going overboard, I think 8 out of 10 was what I got, and I kind of knew that if we got an 8 out of 10, if we got an 8 out of 10 from Hatate, that we would win the game.
Thing is, JP, right? People going about McCowan and his price tag, £1 million. You've just got an 8 out of 10 in the Champions League from a player who costs us something like £1.3 million. And Rio Hatate, you know, in the great scheme of things in that first half, was part of one of the best first 45s I've seen, particularly this season. And we did it in the Champions League. And like you say, with regards to that hat-trick, a couple of things I'm wondering. Has a Celtic player ever scored 3 goals that were chopped off in a single game, never mind in a single half? And has it ever been done in Europe? Because, I mean, that could blow the wind out your sails. The missed penalty can blow the wind out your sails. The number of chances that were saved, I mean, their goalie got the man of the match by UEFA. So at half-time, I think, in terms of what happened in the second half and why did we come down to the levels, I think we had put so much into that first half, JP, that justifiably, we probably thought we should have been a couple of goals to the good, right? And we weren't. And it's all about character then, isn't it? And it's about the fact that they're going to get a bit of second wind in the second half. They had a great travelling support. They want to give them something back. And it was a completely different game in the second half. But, you know, when we're talking about Euro progress, and last night was very, very emotional. One person in particular said in the comments that I was on the happy juice. No, I was just drunk on emotion last night, because I would never sit on a stream. I know some people think it's all right and get bevied. I certainly wouldn't do that. So after the game last night, there was a lot of...
Pro show, Paul. I mean, that is for some people, but it's definitely not. Well, you don't really drink, do you? So it'd be quite weird if I saw you sitting with a bottle of cider or something like that. But
I'm on the Coke Zero today. I mean, that's as hard as it gets. Maybe an energy drink when I'm going for a run. So after the game last night, there was a lot of emotion, and I want to talk about expectations, because the emotions were running so high that people were going on about, we don't deserve to get through. That was a rotten second half. And I think you've got to look at it in its entirety, not just that 90 minutes, the campaign itself. But let's step back. And I found this quite interesting. Brendan Rodgers talking about last season's campaign, and maybe even the campaign before that. If we're talking about European progress, and you take the Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Borussia Dortmund away ties out of those three campaigns, and I'm seeing progress, JP, right? They're blips, and they can happen. They can happen to, a lot richer clubs than Celtic and bigger leagues than Celtic. And that's happened once in each campaign. And that's something we need to obviously focus on and make sure it doesn't happen. Going to Real Madrid, going to the Bernabeu and getting pumped 5+ goals, it could happen to anybody in that league. Maybe not right now in terms of Liverpool, but I see it as progress over a period of time, not just progress since Brendan has come in. And I find it interesting that he does go back to last season, and he talks about last season. Now, I'm looking at the table right now, and I see Feyenoord, who are doing brilliantly, right? And where are they sitting? So they're sitting...
They beat Bayern Munich last night 3-0.
Aye, they put that 3-0. They're sitting 11th, JP, and they can still get in the top 8. So I was thinking about last season, and I touched on it last night about progression, right? So let's use Feyenoord for an example. So last season, we played them twice. We beat them once. They beat us away 2-0. But that away game, if we're talking margins, 2 sendings off in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. I think the stat at the time was something along the lines of we hadn't had 2 senders off in Europe in the previous 37 years. And we got 2 in 7 minutes. That's an anomaly. That doesn't happen. It's the opening game. It's away from home. And you're not going to win a game with 9 men in the Champions League, right? So I was looking at that team, and what have they done to progress? So I thought they must have really invested in this side. Well, what they've done is they've lost Arne Slot for a start, who's now in a Liverpool side who are hosing it in the Champions League. In terms of sales and purchases, I was having a wee look at that as well. So they spent £15.2 million in the summer, euros in the summer, right? And they brought in 8 players for 15.2 million. 8 players. That's under €2 million on average per player. And they brought in 55.35 million euros, selling 5 players. Their net spend was minus £40 million. Yet, that team that, I looked at them last season, I thought they were all right. Obviously, they're a certain level. But they didn't put us to the sword, JP. And that side has progressed to the point where they're beating Bayern Munich last night, convincingly. They're sitting 11th in the Champions League and potentially will be in the top 8 come the, once we do all the mathematics. That's European progress. And that's European progress in terms of budgets that is not beyond Celtic. I mean, they made a profit of €40 million in the summer.
I mean, people within Celtic surely will hopefully be looking at other examples of European clubs like you've just done and sort of go, right, well, let's use that as a kind of a yardstick to measure ourselves with, because I mean, I'm just from a purely eye test point of view, I've seen us do things this season in the Champions League that I've not seen us do possibly ever. Like getting that away draw in Italy against Atalanta is definitely proven something that's going to be a massive part of wherever we finish next week, because we didn't get hammered in that game. Our goal difference, as much as it might only be 1, we've got a goal difference of 1, having been beaten 7-1 in this group, which at that time you're probably thinking, how are we clawing that back? But we have. But if things had gone the way that night that everyone expected them to, or maybe not every Celtic fan, but certainly a lot of the detractors would have had us getting, beaten 4-5-0 that night, then would be minus goal difference. That does play a part, I believe, if it comes to being level in points. Is that right? Is that being confirmed? Do we have a stato that can confirm whether or not if we finish level in points with 4 or 5 other teams, do does goal difference come into it? I don't know.
Yeah, will do. Absolutely.
Yeah, it must do. They've got to measure it some way. So, and admittedly, probably the teams around about us are on a better goal difference than us. I understand that. However, just from a pure progression point of view, it makes that Dortmund game stand out even more so as a really, really bad night at the office as opposed to day.
Totally. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I was also looking at that because it's not looking back to the Ange years. I'm all in when it comes to Brendan, and I have been since the day he was announced, JP, right? But I do think in terms of normalising Champions League games, that's what we had to do initially. And I think that it's been a process over a 3-year period in normalising that. All right, okay. We know that Celtic Park's the place to be on a Champions League night. We know the atmosphere is going to be rocking and it's going to be unbelievable. It's going to take people's breaths away and all this kind of stuff. But how about living with these teams that ordinarily were beating us in Europe? And I think that if you remove the 3 games, we've had a trouncing, by the way, and it's never nice. If you remove those 3 games, I think we've lived with these teams. And I use the Feyenoord one as an example because we were, for me, more than comfortable in both games if it hadn't been for those 2 sendings off. And look how they have built on last season, and that's what we need to do. And the headline and the tagline of today's show talks about some of the stuff that was swirling around in the aftermath of the game last night. You weren't even probably home when the Kyogo bomb was dropped, and then the Jota bomb was dropped, and we're hearing today the Tierney thing's advancing. So we'll talk all about that because for me, that's what we need to do, not the Kyogo thing. But we will have a wee look at that. So let's have a wee chat to some of the commenters. It's been a busy one last night. It's a busy one today. We're 1,800 strong on the Acsom live stream on a Thursday, JP. And you think back to those dark old days of lockdown where we were just sitting here, want to talk to somebody about Celtic and deciding, we'll put it out in the channel. And here we are, 1,800 strong doing it.
I was going to reference that in terms of when you were saying about having a drink. I was like, I think I did have a drink on a few of those post-match games, and I don't think anybody can blame blame me or anyone for having a drink, having to get through that season because it was
different times, testing times,
particularly tough, especially the post matches because you're just like I just felt bereft because of the circumstances that we were in. It was so weird, alien to me that I was able to pretty much see my empty seat at the ground if I was watching it on the fabled Pass to Paradise, which the most ill-advised name I think ever given to anything because it was I didn't feel like paradise at the time.
No, and that this is another thing that's come to my mind today because I'm a bit like yourself, like absolutely drinking up everything I could last night after the game, watching the interviews, just the whole lot, noticing wee bit, having not seen the unique angle yet, but noticing wee bits after the game that I hadn't noticed at the time. For example, Idah, if the defender doesn't get to that ball, Kuhn's got it. Kuhn's got it at the back post. Kuhn's putting that away. So, it's no luck that the guy put it in. He just put it in before it got to Kuhn. Alistair Johnson's reaction when you look at him with Idah. I don't know if you focused on that.
No, I did see Idah and Kyogo on the big screens embrace because I was looking up at the screens just to see what was going on there, and because obviously the camera was like homing in on different things, and Brendan Rodgers goes up to Idah and gives him a big hug, and then you see Kyogo come over and he's just absolutely beaming and so happy for Idah that although Chris Sutton I watched Chris Sutton talking about it. It's just like oh, even I wouldn't claim that. He's like he can't be claiming that as his goal. And it's a bit harsh to be going down that route. I think
it was a bit harsh. I thought Killian Sheridan put out a tweet. I think it was that shared my kind of view on it, and it was like we'll get to the ball. The ball was unbelievable, sensational pass. I remember the Real Madrid pass where Juranovic throws the ball to Hatate in one fell swoop. He finds somebody in top left. Unbelievable pass. The spidey senses, the awareness, unreal. Last night's pass was incredible. Just the weight of the foot and the wee shimmy, then the vision.
Took out the entire team, pretty much. Like he was omitted the entire pitch to get the ball to him.
And that's the thing we've spoken about before. That's the moment that I think to myself, can anybody else on the park do that? Probably not. Maybe Engels. Engels has got a good range of passing. But the way that he got the ball, the vision, the pinpoint accuracy of the pass. But here, we'll talk about Kyogo, obviously. That ball falls to Kyogo. I don't know if he's got the upper body strength to shrug off the defender. So we can't, deny Idah there. He's done that. And yes, he hasn't put the ball away, and it's ricocheted and the defenders put it in. But as I say, Kuhn would have done it anyway. But let's not take away from Idah. The energy he felt after that goal, going right up to the crowd, JP, right, and embracing a fan in the crowd.
It's right in front of me.
I mean, in terms of energy, positive energy, like these things mean a lot in sport. And I just think Idah, we talk about confidence, lack of confidence. He needs a moment. He maybe didn't put that ball in the net, but he got a moment. He got that moment last night. And fair play to him. He'll not get the goal. I think the announcer gave it. Wasn't Tiger Tim, unfortunately, but the announcer gave him the goal.
His real name is?
Something Stevens. Is it Tiger Tim Stevens?
That's not his real name.
Is it not?
It's Jimmy McGrory.
I did not know that. Jimmy McGrory, wow.
An article about him, because I was just looking up stuff about the game in '93.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, and I read an article because he's battling MS.
I'd heard that.
I was reading how he got frog marched out at half time. He didn't even get the second half. The security just took him out, and
I find that bizarre. I find it bizarre because those times it was, and I've said this so many times, a lot of it was about self-deprecating humour, but certainly humour and going to the games, knowing that we didn't have a great side, knowing that the stadium was not fit for purpose, and we had no business acumen within the club to put it right, in time for the Taylor report, the deadline, which is why we had to move out and go to Hampden. And going to the games was pretty bleak, but the humour is what kind of, in many, many occasions, got us through it, JP. So when the announcer, over a tannoy asked for, what was it, a minute silence because Rangers had been bounced out of Europe, or something along those lines, I'm thinking to myself, to get frog marched out the stadium. I've got Michael Kelly's book. Now, Michael Kelly would have been on the board of directors at that time. And his book talks about the installation of new screens at Celtic Park, because they were doing things and thinking it was forward thinking, and we were going to generate income through advertising, and we could also put slogans up there. And one of the slogans used the H word, which has been outlawed, right?
Mm-hmm.
To wind up Rangers fans when Celtic scored against Rangers. So a member of the board thought that was funny, right? Yet Tiger Tim can't say that. Listen, a wee bit of a retro vibe about last night's win. Tiger Tim, absolutely, that win was for you.
I saw that on Twitter. Somebody saying that was for Tiger Tim.
I think it was the E-Tim.
It was E-Tims, yeah.
E-Tims, absolutely. And I shared that sentiment. But there was also the fact that we won the game by an own goal, which was what happened in 1993. Alan Bowman scored the goal.
Oh, yeah.
For young boys. So we've now got two favourite young boys footballers from the past.
It's pretty weird, isn't it? I never thought about that kind of synergy. That is very, very odd.
It was very unusual, because Liam Carrigan and I were talking about it on Tuesday, JP, because I brought it up. I brought the Celtic wiki up on the screen. We were wearing an unusual Celtic strip that night. And
didn't have the Umbro and
the Umbro, aye. And I had a look at it. I was like, that's right, aye. It was an after extra time own goal that got us scraping through to the next round. But things have changed since then, thankfully. Now, John Mullane points out he was sitting below the boys in the main stand, 85 minutes gone, 0-0, and still singing loud and proud. Unreal backing, 100%. It's all about energy. And Jungle Lion, everyone in great mood. An hour later, all the Kyogo news, typical Celtic. Now, I shared something back in June. I think I might have shared it with yourself, JP, about the fact that Kyogo was going to be announced as changing his agency in August. That August was the date I was given. And then at that point, Celtic would be willing to sell him. And at that point, Celtic were looking for 18 million quid. Now, I shared that with the Acsom group and all the rest of it. Don't want to try and be in the know by putting it out on the social media. Seemed a wee bit left field, got to be honest with you, JP, when I was told that info. But it happened. And so when he changed his agency, that's when you're thinking, there's a bit of kudos to this. There's a bit of weight behind this information. If that's the case, and that's been on the card since June, that's 7 months of Kyogo thinking, A, that he's going to change agency. Why do you tend to do that? all right, okay, they might get you better brand deals and all that kind of stuff, JP. But generally speaking, it's about making your next move, isn't it? It's about making your next move and making it the best move you can get. Then there was all that palaver about Man City, which I didn't buy at all, that Man City were interested. I just thought that was people pulling strings to try and get a bit of generation of interest. And then last night, as Jungle Lion says, the story breaks that potentially Kyogo is wanted in a £10 million move. Now, the timing was horrendous.
If your price dropped by 8 million when you turn 30, is that?
I know. It's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. That's ageism. He's not been like in his best vintage Kyogo form, but last night, JP, he could have scored a hat trick in one half of European football. That's what he's still got. That's the ability that, I mean, there was nothing to do with any of the goals that were his fault, really. I think, maybe marginally offside in one of them. But in terms of the finishing was brilliant. I watched the goals back this morning. Finishing was excellent, right? And that's the calibre of player that we've got. However, and there's always a however, if this has been rumbling on since the June, which was when we first got the info, right, and he wants to move, we're going to have to facilitate it.
That's the biggest. I'm glad you said that as your last part of that, because that's the biggest thing. If he wants to move, if he's had enough of Glasgow and enough of the Scottish grounds and that kind of monotony, which I'm sure sets in, well, being told by someone who could say it with some authority that it does set in for a lot of the players. That there is no question that they're okay, they enjoy it and they enjoy the good aspects of being at Celtic, but 4 times a season, that kind of got to go up to Dingwall again, all of that does play in. So if that has affected him and he's like, I want a new challenge, it's my time to leave, then I'm okay with it. I'm absolutely okay with it. Obviously, it would be. I don't ever like players of significance leaving in January, because it just always feels like they're kind of going out the back door rather than taking the acclaim of what they've done this season so far, because we are not in this position in any competition without Kyogo. I think I'd be surprised if anybody would argue that. Albeit that he's not scored 40 goals or even 20 goals or whatever, but his play, his all-round play, as I was trying to make the point last week about Idah, brings goals from elsewhere in the team, which is what Brendan Rodgers said he wants, a spread of goals. But if Kyogo does want to go, I would find it a bit weird that he's wanting to go to Rennes, given their current predicament and the fact that they're hardly the most attractive of options to go to after Celtic. I mean, it would seem, no disrespect to them, but it would seem a bit of an odd move. At this point in his career, I would have thought maybe the MLS or something like that would be more attractive if there was options out there, as he's been linked with. But it just seemed that it's Rennes, are they not like way down the table or whatever?
I was thinking about this, right? So I'm trying to visualize how the conversation goes where you go to a new agency, right? And you're basically saying to the agency, this is what I want for you. This is why I've changed agencies. This is what I want from you. And I think, if he gives them the criteria, I want to play in the top 6 leagues. I want to play for a team in the top 6 leagues. What's been happening in the last 7 months then, JP? Because, I mean, he was signed in August, but obviously it was all underway in June. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been told about it. Is he's been punted to all these teams in all these leagues. The agency has done that, and they've come back to Kyogo and said, "Oh, we've got some interest from Rennes." So I think that's what it boils down to. He has said to his agency, "I want a top 6 club in Europe, top 6 league in Europe." Okay, this is the team that will take you in the top 6. Because, as I said, when the Man City thing broke, JP, I just seen it as smoke and mirrors. I'm thinking, right, people are pulling a few strings to say this is the calibre of team that will be interested in Kyogo. It's clearly not. It's even though, can I just point out that we're above Man City in the Champions League at the moment?
Well, believe me, I've looked at that table quite a few times for the proverbial and giggles, but yeah, it's enjoyable to see that. But right, so they come back to him and say Rennes. That doesn't mean to say that he has. Does that mean to say he has to go because he said he wants a move and this is all you're coming back to me with? that then equals, oh well, I'll just go there then. I mean, I've been to that ground. I went to that game in what was it, September 2019 when we played them. Where did Bayo get sent off? Somebody got sent. Did somebody get sent off? There's a lot of things have happened in many aspects of my life since then, so I don't know. But I think we drew. Did we not draw 1-1 with them?
I'll check that. I'll check that because I can't recall. But by the way, these things happen. Bayo, we did get a sending off. Let's have a look. We definitely got a sending off, mate. So let's have a look to see who it was.
But was it Stade Roazhon?
By the way, great knowledge. It was Bayo. It was Vakun Issouf Bayo in the 92nd minute.
Yeah.
And that was after a one each draw where both goals were scored from the penalty spot. So Bayo's sent off, yeah. Great knowledge.
So it was Stade Roazhon, I think, is the name of the ground, if memory serves correct. And it wasn't as if I was like, oh, we're visiting some French superpower here. It was a provincial team. The town of Rennes is pretty quaint. It's not Paris. It's not Marseille. You know, it didn't really feel like we were playing a big club or a big team. And again, there may be there won't be Rennes fans watching this that'll be like, what's he saying? We've done this and we've done that. And I know any club always will point to their past successes, including us. But I just don't. I find it a bizarre move. I found it a bizarre move for Jota, but then Jota was probably looking for anywhere. Like I think at that point for him, it was a case of just get me to a club in Europe and let me try and rebuild what's fallen away from me in the last year. So but it may just be a case of he's genuinely looking just to move and play in a different league, and as long as he's compensated well and salary and everything else, that might not matter to him, and that's fair enough. But I was never expecting Kyogo to go to a Man City or a club of anywhere near that level, but it seems a bit mental that he's going to something that's so far away from that level to me. And then, of course, you've got the Jota thing that my mate Chris is convinced that Jota can't come back to the UK to play because of tax reasons. Although that was not played down, that was scuppered by a couple of guys. Sean was telling me last night that because he's not a UK citizen, that's not a factor. He's a non-domicile, so he could come back.
I've heard similar, JP, and someone in the comments probably been in the situation himself where they've maybe worked in Saudi and what the implications would be. So any other information, but I've heard that would not be a stumbling block to bring Jota back to Celtic.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. So there could be some truth to this. So it's a loan rumor, isn't it? It's not a buy.
Well, the only thing that's holding me back to actually going all in on this, I mean, the name has been connected to Celtic last night, and that's fine. And we're looking at that because, as I say, if we want to do that kind of fire thing from last season to this season, we need to strengthen again. We need to be bold. Even though they made £40 million in the transfer window in the summer, I think the move for Tierney is a step towards that, where it's like, right, let's get tooled up for the Champions League. Let's do this, right? Where else on the park? Actually, up top, I think we need a striker as well on the wing. So, like, if Jota's that guy, fantastic, right? But the thing with me that's concerning me slightly is that we were clearly going to be bringing Johnny Kenny back from Shamrock Rovers. By the time that went through the BS filter and started dropping into news outlets, we were going to be signing John Joe Kenny, right? And that was the worst rumour I've heard all season. There was no truth in it whatsoever. So I'm thinking Celtic, Rennes signing, somebody got the wrong end of the stick and ran with the Jota story because it gets a million clicks before anybody knows the validity of it anyway. So to be honest with you, I'm believing the Kyogo story. I've been believing the Kieran Tierney story since the summer because that came from the same source as the Kyogo one. The Jota one, I'm not sure. It's quite fanciful for me, JP. By the way, I think absolutely that's the kind of calibre player I want on the wing. But I think it's just a rumour at the moment until I see something a wee bit more solid. I'm going to treat it just like a rumour.
I mean, it's not like we don't need a winger, is it? I mean, Palma's clearly for the off. James Forrest is still injured. Maeda's now suspended. I know that he can't play in that game. And by the way, is Maeda suspended for 2 games or 1?
It depends on the reason. So you've got reckless or violent conduct, haven't you? So if you get the violent conduct, then it'll be upgraded.
I'll just it back. It's not that bad. I mean, okay, by the letter of the law, maybe, but it's no. I was expecting worse. Put it that way. When I saw it this morning, I was expecting worse. I mean,
see with the clip now. The clip we were being shown at the time that the VAR review was taking place, JP. If that's the clip the ref's looking at, you'll lose a bit of context around what's actually happened prior to what Maeda's done, right? You do lose a bit of context because all you were seeing was Maeda basically kicking him against the back of his 2 legs. That's all you kept seeing, and it was on a loop. So the ref's looking at that going, okay, that just looks as though it's an isolated incident. He's not going for the ball, red card. You're not looking at what's actually happened leading up to it either. So again, poor Maeda. That's twice that's happened.
See,
one last season, one
Brendan Rodgers had scales. Apparently, it was Yang that was going to come on, but as soon as it went to VAR, Brendan Rodgers was like, "Well, he's going to get sent off," and he had scales stripped and ready to go before the ref had come back out of the tunnel.
And you could see Scalesy doing that. We're going 5 at the back. You could see him doing that.
Okay.
He was telling his teammates.
Another thing, I don't know if it was pointed out to you last night at the game that they did, which was new in terms of interaction at the game, but when there was a goal in another game, it came up on the screen.
Right.
Like, it constantly had the score on the screen of the game, of the Celtic game, and then it would change if there was a goal in another game. It would bring it up, and somebody said, "Oh, that's new." And I remember when I was at somebody slagged me off last week for saying, "Oh, JP and his supposed knowledge of German football," because I'd never heard the Holstein Kiel. I've obviously heard of Kiel, the place, but I don't know the team or the club. Sorry, I've not got an encyclopedic knowledge on every single German team, but I went to a Hanover Leverkusen game.
How's your Bulgarian football knowledge? Just
zero. I went to a random Hanover Leverkusen game with a bunch of guys from the Heriot Watt. It was on Paddy Kelleher's stag do. Went to Hamburg for a stag do. It was an absolute riot. It was a great time. Went to the St. Pauli game on the Friday. And then Hanover Leverkusen on the Saturday, and it was the last game of the season, so they did this thing whenever a goal, because what was happening in other games impacted their game, there would be a trumpet would sound or some sort of klaxon, and then a ball would appear on the screen, and then it would zoom away, and then a score would come up, and it would come up with a club, and it would be like a goal, and then versus the other one. Now, all the crowd were all totally engaged in these score lines that were coming through from other games because they impacted the 2 clubs that were playing. And that was really cool. So last night they did that. But they also, after a VAR review, they gave a detailed description on the screen of what the reason that the VAR ruled, like as in text. So it came up, Dyson Maeda was given a red card due to excessive force in a tackle. So actually...
Danny, I'm not saying it was in the red. What I'm saying is that in the context of that movement, as far as I'm aware, the young boys player was not punished. And in the context of that, I think he should have been. But the ref's only called to look at what Maeda's done. So yeah, I'm not arguing that it's a red. I don't think Brendan Rodgers or Dyson Maeda will argue either. But actually, if you watch the entire move, and it happened twice actually to Maeda with the same player, there was a niggle. There was definitely a niggle from the opponent as well.
Right, the corner flag. Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, Maeda was. If you actually were to forensically analyse the roughhouse treatment that Maeda was getting from their team, whilst it might have all been within the law, I think that was just probably frustration from Maeda that sort of came to the surface there. I don't think it's the same as the Atletico Madrid thing where he was going for the ball. I still can't believe that we got a red card for that, given some of the other things that you've seen being not given a red card.
It's a red card, Henrik. I'm not saying it's not a red card. The opponent wasn't punished. And this is the issue. And the ref, if he's going to watch the full movement, he's maybe going to see 2 offences there. Obviously, the red card is a red card. I'm not, you know what? The green tinted specs are not on. It was absolutely a red card.
It clearly is, because he's not making an attempt for the ball, and it's sort of off the ball after a skirmish. I think he probably was expecting it as he stood there waiting on the decision being made. What I will say again is like that referee last night in the first half was no wonder he got booed off. I mean, he wasn't getting booed off for the goals being disallowed. He was getting booed off for the way he was handling the game.
Don't know if you noticed that one, but Kyogo was taking it, ended up on the deck.
Oh, in the middle of the park when we were breaking.
Yeah,
and he stopped the game to go over to. And I've never seen. I don't know what happened there. So is that he was elbowed in the face? Is that right?
He went down because I mean the thing with Kyogo, right, is going back to the Idah incident. He can get pushed off the ball, right? But it wasn't one of their ones. You looked at it and there was contact, and it was off the ball. It was an off the ball incident. We didn't look at it. You know, I do agree with you, Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. Dafton made it a lash out, especially at that stage of the game, because that's the moment, and you're starting to look at that. All right, there's another 5 minutes on top of this.
As they've got the free kick to pump into the box.
I know.
After, I mean, those saves from Schmeichel, a word has to be given to him.
Let's talk about Big Casper. I mean, he signed a new deal.
Sweet, the first volley that I mean, that's an absolutely unbelievable save because he had to be so strong with his reaction to it like that. You're not getting a weak hand to that and keeping it out. That's just going through you if you're not really strong in your handling.
See the thing with the goalkeeper, you've got somebody like Kasper Schmeichel coming to the football club with no connection whatsoever to Celtic, and he buys into it. He absolutely buys into it, and it's no birthday card. You know what? He's right up for actually. He's bought into the fact that we're trying to do something here and we're trying to progress in Europe. And you look at, for example, someone with not an ounce of the same kind of quality or pedigree as Kasper Schmeichel coming into this football club and looking completely disinterested. Vasilis Barkas, who cost us, actually, you know this, he only cost us 3.75 because there was a deal on that whereby the 5.5 was after appearances and all that he never made. So we only lost 3.75 on Vasilis Barkas, a guy who didn't have an ounce of the ability or the pedigree of Kasper Schmeichel. He's come in with all that, and that could be, you know, brilliant for the ego and all the rest of it for Kasper coming up to Scotland and being the big fish, if you like. But the way, I don't know why, it's not my birthday. Maybe that's StreamYard calling me a balloon for my take on things. I don't know. But Kasper Schmeichel this season, man, I mean, that's 21 shutouts in 35 games. That's astonishing, JP. Absolutely astonishing. And last night...
Anyone listening on audio, a series of cartoon balloons just appeared in front of Paul's face.
There must be a buzzword that sparks...
For a reason.
Must be. And I don't know what it is.
No, the Schmeichel. If you could rewind back to the month that he signed, which would be, I guess, did we not get him in straight away? Oh no, he didn't go in the pre-season tour, did he? Or did he?
Well, I remember Sinisalo playing in the pre-season, and to be honest with you,
Schmeichel didn't come in the pre-season. I don't think. Did he not come in after it?
After the event, I know.
I remember saying, "Oh, it could have been over there and getting to know everybody, and then why wasn't he signed?" But I do remember one guy in the comments vociferously saying with so much self-righteousness that it was the wrong guy and Celtic were stingy. It's another Lowell penny pinching move. We should have got Livakovic, the keeper that we were after, that was going to command a hefty transfer fee. You know, should have got him. You know, Schmeichel's just another one working his ticket and he's passed it and blah, blah, blah. And he'll cost us in Europe and everything. All of that. Pretty much the same spiel that we got about Joe Hart as well from a lot of people who were against that. I mean, I said at the time I didn't particularly like Joe Hart, but I also was aware that he was a good keeper. I didn't like him because of his England, Man City, I think there was a lot of people who didn't really like the vibe of Joe Hart before he came to Celtic, but what we got with Joe Hart was a different prospect. I mean, he was from straight away, he was a really, really nice guy who came across really well. Like you said, bought into it in much the same way that he's handed the baton over to Schmeichel, who is clearly loving life. And on the day that he signs an extension, which I think everybody's pleased about, I don't think there'll be many people that will be like, why have we given this guy another deal? He pulls off 2 massive saves in a key Champions League game to help us qualify for the next stage, which is what, again, young boys Bern, not great, not a great side, but they were a side that was put in front of us, and on another day that could have been a horror 0-0 or worse. So you can only beat what's in front of you.
No, totally. But I'm just looking at the Man City game. You remember we beat them 4-3, and obviously spooked them into having a really bad season.
Yeah.
Schmeichel was playing.
All right. So did he fly over and join us there or something? Because I don't remember him being signed going out. I think he might have gone out there while we were there or something like that. He was signed to go and then meet up with us out there. I'm maybe talking absolute rubbish. I can't remember.
I do recall there being a lot of concern about why we didn't have Idah over there, being in America as well, JP. But I mean, Kasper Schmeichel buying into it and all the rest of it, it's great. And Joe Hart left with all our best wishes because he had made such an impact. And he was a massive reason for us having those successes under Ange Postecoglou, moving into Brendan Rodgers' first season. He was a leader, which we lacked when Ange took over. But I mean, listen, last night I was emotional as any Celtic fan would have been, but I was daring to suggest that Kasper's an upgrade, and I do think he has been an upgrade. I also think he's been the best signing of the summer, JP. And you know, as bold as it sounds, I think, and he cost us nothing. I know he'll be on a great wage and all the rest of it, but I think it's been incredible that Brendan Rodgers can get his mobile phone, go through the contacts list, and just say, right, 3 days later, Kasper Schmeichel's in the door. Absolutely brilliant.
I love the fact that his dad is the way that his dad speaks about how much of a great time he's having, and his dad would probably be at every game if he could, but I'm sure he's got work to do on punditry duties in Denmark or wherever. But you know, any time you've seen or heard from Peter Schmeichel at a game, you know, there was a really great clip of. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, there was a really great clip of Peter Schmeichel talking to Joe Hart, and it was a picture I think I saw, and the two of them are just, you know, probably standing talking about Peter's son, you know, and how great he is. I mean, what a cool thing to see your son at this late stage in his career come to a club like Celtic, which Peter Schmeichel has gone on record as saying as he's never experienced anything like that, really. He was off on a break after years and flew over to join the team. Aye, right. John Francis Pope. What's that? John Francis Pope, Paul McKeown. Aye. Is that your Sunday name? Aye. Brilliant. Aye. No, so I just the story's a great one, and obviously he had the manager's trust before he put on a Celtic goalkeeping jersey, and he's certainly got the trust. I'll be honest, I wasn't ready to say that I wanted that guy because I didn't really know anything about him, the guy from Newcastle. I couldn't say that. When I heard Schmeichel being linked, I was like, this makes sense. As an experienced guy coming in, I'm pretty sure I said that at the time, it's an experienced guy coming at the time who will command respect immediately. But signing a 23, 24, 25-year-old keeper for £8 million who hasn't had the pressure of playing at a club like Celtic, who hasn't been through that kind of mill, so to speak, that could make a brilliant keeper sink. Do you know what I mean? A guy could come with a reputation and a big price tag and flop, just like Barkas did.
Best example I can think of. He has come in with a bit of kudos and credibility, rather. He's a Greek international. He's playing Champions League football for AEK Athens, and he comes in with this 5.5, which was the reported figure fee. Flops, absolutely flops. Schmeichel comes in, and I think what a lot of people were saying at the time is, "Oh, that lacks a bit of imagination." Brendan's had to phone his old pal Phil Lester.
That was the one criticism, I think, because you're like, well, what the hell have we been doing? Joe Hart told us he was leaving in January, or February, and you're like, what have we been doing? Just like the lights off in a room, and Celtic are just looking around for like a set of goalkeeping clubs to put their hands on, and it's just like. It seemed a bit haphazard. That was the one criticism I think that anybody could label at the club, not particularly the player.
Yeah, the club. It was like, sorry to bring this up, but it was like when Willie Collum got that job with the Scottish referees, right? And remember, what's his name? The boy from Alaba, I forget his name. And he always wears a pinstripe suit, like something out of Dick Tracy. And he came out and he was like, "We have skibbereds, the Americas in the world."
Michael Mulroney. Is it?
And I was like, no, he's haven't he? You absolutely have not got CVs because he did. He did.
No.
I was like, you haven't he? The guy was a shoo-in for day one. Come on. So the Kasper Schmeichel thing, yeah, it might have lacked a bit of creativity and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? Who cares? The boy was the perfect fit. He was a perfect fit, and he was brilliant, unbelievable last night, like incredible last night. More on the Kyogo thing. There's a lot of people coming through with their comments. We can't forget the impact of this wee guy at Celtic. You know, unbelievable. I've been counting down to his 100th goal. That would have been brilliant last night if he got a hat trick. He'd have been that wee bit closer. But it does seem as though he could be out the building. I had maybe airbrushed this one out for last week, but remember the MLS official site had more or less announced Kyogo as a player in their league, and then apologised for that. So there's been loads of things swirling around in relation to Kyogo. The Urban Culture says, please don't go. Reminded me of a nice wee club hit from the 1990s. And KW. Rob Lilly. KWS, absolutely. So Brendan, it's on the old treadmill playlist. BR comments, paraphrasing, any player not wanting to stay. The reason I brought this up, Rob, remember he was kind of waxing lyrical actually about Kyogo. And then in the same press conference, he came out kind of like with a steely focus and saying, you know, this is a situation. Anybody who wants to go, they can leave. It was the old JP one, if your head's left the building, your boots can follow. And at the time, I'm thinking,
how good is Ryan Christie?
Oh, I know.
He obviously did want to leave. Fair play to him.
No, I know, absolutely. And there was rumours that we were bringing him back as well. But on the point of Kyogo, I'm going to go back to that. We heard the rumblings around about June time. If that's been the case in the last 7 months, I don't think it's affected his performances. I think the way we've played has affected his performances in terms of not being in the game. You look at touches of the ball and all the rest of it, not getting a great deal of touches during the game, unless he's kind of straying off to the right a wee bit. He did a wee bit of that last night, actually. Him and Kuhn swapped over. So not a vintage campaign. If he wants to go, this is my final word on it. If he wants to go, and it's the same way whoever it is, then it's time for him to go. It's that simple for me, JP. If he thinks he's going to have a future elsewhere, facilitate it. But we have to replace him. We absolutely, I think we're already running short on strikers. We have to replace them.
The Kvistgarden thing doesn't go away, does it?
No, he is the modern day Ray Stephen. Every time there's a transfer rumour, his name's popping up on it.
They want 16 million for him. Oh no, 13.5 million quid. Apparently, according to a report that you just don't know whether any of these things are true anymore until they come to fruition. But it's looking like we'd need to break the now 14-year-old transfer fee in Scotland that's held by a club that no longer exists. 12 million.
Flow.
That's still the record buy, isn't it? I mean, that's stood for that long.
That's incredible.
Yeah, isn't it?
You spend a fiver, I'll spend a tenner. No, we could smash that. And the thing with that is, in terms of a striker, we brought in Adam Idah. There's been a lot of focus on his transfer fee, etc. But what do you think you get for 10 million these days? I mean, we're talking about being a Champions League club, and we're going, wow, we signed 2 players for like 20 million pounds here.
I mean, your stats about Feyenoord at the top of the show prove that you don't need to go and spend that if you're spending it in the right way and you've got your scout in the
right way. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how much of that is a legacy of what Slot had in place at Feyenoord.
100%. They just signed a Polish midfielder from Brighton for like 1.5, 2 million or something like that. I can't remember his name. But obviously the midfield spots at Brighton are so competitive that he's obviously looked to go elsewhere. But I mean, a Polish guy, 1.5, 2 million or something like that. It just gone through there. So, but I mean, talking about transfer fees is probably a good point to bring up. Adam Idah. Yeah, it's not his goal. Yes, it'll be credited as our own goal. But without his movement, his strength in that run and the shot, we don't get that goal. And I was so pleased for him because genuinely on my job and my flat, I said to a guy that sits in front of me, Mark, about 10 minutes into the second half, I went, I really don't want this to be the case because I'd like us to score as soon as possible. But do you think there's a script now written here? Kyogo's had 3 goals in the first half disallowed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's all we're going to get from him in this game. Who's on the bench and who needs a goal? Everyone said Idah needs a big goal and a big moment, a goal to go in off his backside or something like that. I'll take it going in off a young boy's Bern defender. Do you know what I mean? That is what he needed, and I'm just so happy for him. There'll probably still be people out there going, "Oh, he's not worth the money and he's been murdered and all this sort of stuff." But if ever you were going to be involved in a moment for a goal, it's last night. You know, that it's when you've got that. I mean, God, that guy will dine out in that moment in his dreams for the rest of his life. I mean, if he never scores another goal, I hope that's not the case. But it was just brilliant for him to have that moment, and like you say, the celebration and everything else, fully merited for him. And I'm sure there's a lot of pent up frustration came out during that celebration. Hell of a knee slide as well, the marks of which were still visible at full time.
I was thinking about that because I always remember, right, the groundsman at Old Trafford had a dig at Lee Sharp for doing it.
Oh, really?
He had a
he went to the corner flag instead and did his Elvis with the corner flag.
Yeah.
That was against Barcelona.
Right, so the time that he did the thing that took a big dunt out the pitch, I'm sure he score a hat-trick against Arsenal or something like that, and he done this thing and he got a row from the groundsman, you know, just to bring him right back down to earth, almost literally. But you made a really good point there. It was a moment he needed as much as it was a goal, and he got the moment. Even though he's not been given the goal, he got the moment, he got the adulation, that energy, the momentum, the confidence and all this kind of stuff. Because if the stories around Kyogo are true, Idah's going to play a much bigger part than he's playing right now. You know, in terms of against Kilmarnock, I think he came on in the 82nd minute. He done really well. I wish he had opened up and just struck. You know, that massive run.
Yeah.
And he lays on Kuhn. He should have struck. I would have loved to have seen that. And that would have been the moment. But obviously, you know, he's left the drama till last night, and that's fine.
Well, if you're going to choose which game to have your moment in, you're going to take it in the Champions League.
Oh, yeah.
Nail-biting 5 minutes to go. Sold out Celtic Park. There wasn't a spare seat last night that I could see. It was quite something. So, and just again looking at the financials of what we are going to earn potentially from this campaign, it's going to probably eclipse any previous Champions League campaign because of the victories, the qualification, the ticket sales and revenue at Celtic Park as well will probably be more than it's ever been, because I'm sure the tickets are more expensive. A single ticket was like 45 quid last night, I think. Maybe that was just for a season ticket holder, I'm not sure.
There were 60 quid tickets as well. Aye.
Right.
I mean, see the thing, JP, you're right. As fans, we haven't even mentioned the financial element of last night. It's just we're there, and that means more to us because we're not the bean counters.
100%. 100%. I mean, yeah, that to me is a bonus. The fact is that a certain group of supporters have been poking fun at us for not having won a knockout tie for now 21 years or something like that. I mean, what an amazing achievement to get through in the Champions League. And then, of course, they'll get the detractors, be like, "Oh, they've played the worst teams in the competition. We'll take a look at Dynamo Kiev and where they are in the Europa League," and then come back to me on that argument because they're not doing too well.
You can also use the Atalanta example, JP, as a counter. You know, and we've spoken a fair bit about Feyenoord last season, obviously, and I also think, you know, in terms of the draw, it's almost like a go-to. It's a default to try and undermine what Celtic have achieved. I seen a headline last night that was it was dripping with bitterness from a Scottish journalist talking about, you know, squeezing through and all this kind of stuff. And I saw a tweet this morning from someone going on about, you know, how lucky we were to get. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're through based on the outcome of 7 games of football, not just last night. And by the way, we're not focusing on the money. We're not even focusing on the Villa game going down there, because I think that if we can get a combination, right, of that exciting attacking play that we saw in the first half last night, which we've also seen against Slovan Bratislava and we've also seen against Leipzig this season in the Champions League, if we can get a combination of that and, you know, that really like solid defensive display that we saw against Atalanta and be able to combine those within the same game, I think we've cracked it. It can't just be, all right, it's a swashbuckling performance for 90 minutes by Celtic. Maybe it's a 45-minute performance or a 20-minute performance like that wins you the game. And then it's the Atalanta, the ultra-defensive performance that gets it over the line.
And by the way, another important thing to take into consideration is that result last night would point you in the direction of an extended Brendan Rodgers stay, possibly, because he's seen he put his head on the line and said, "I'd like to think that we could progress in Europe. It's been well documented. We've not been at the races with regards to the top European competition." So he's seeing his ambitions realised by the club. And in the first half last night, I was kind of looking across the team and thinking to myself, we've actually got a player in the starting lineup. We've got players in every position in that game in the starting lineup who are worth north of 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You go around that team, fair enough. Okay, Schmeichel's probably the outlier given his age and everything else. Like, we're not going to sell Kasper Schmeichel for a big fee. But Kasper Schmeichel aside, you've got, again, you'd probably take Greg Taylor out of it because he's only got 6 months left of his contract that he can leave for free. But Alistair Johnston, Canadian international, bought for 4 million. We're selling him. We're not selling him for 4 million. Trusty Carter Vickers, 6 million a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Midfield, Engels, 11 million. Carl McGregor, if we were to sell him, I would expect us to get a decent return despite his age. Rio Hatate, definitely more than 5 million. Up top, Kyogo's getting linked for 10 million. Maeda, what price Maeda? At 26 or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't be looking for chump change for him. Kun, God only knows. So you're looking across that team, and for once, we actually have a team that has a value that we've all wanted for so long. There's always been those in the past years or whatever. There's always been like, oh, if only we had, this guy, and this guy, another 3 players in these positions, we would maybe be able to do something. Well, we've got those players, and now we're actually doing something. Shock horror, it's not exactly rocket science that if you spend a bit of money. And by the way, I'm talking about Engels would be signed for 11 million. You know that he's going to go for more than that. So that's double the value that I've given as an average, like in terms of 5 million or whatever. You're using 5 million as a benchmark. So it's a great time to be a Celtic supporter. And if there's any negativity coming from anywhere, from anyone, I don't want to hear it.
That's fine. We'll win against Villa and we'll get in the top 8 as well.
If you're negative, you're muted. That is as far as I'm in this scenario.
Listen, I didn't mean that. What I would say, though, about the Villa game is it's almost like there's been certain fixtures in this run, in this campaign, where you've looked at it and thought, that's a win. We're not getting nothing there. And one of the ones that I didn't think would get anything was Atalanta, but we did. And Villa, listen, they're obviously playing for a top 8 position. That's what they want. They don't want to go to the playoffs. They want to get right into the last 16. But Celtic, as I say, if we can combine the creative forward play that we've shown across this campaign with the defensive display that we showed against Atalanta, then listen, I'm looking forward to the Aston Villa game. One final thing I want to mention, I'd started talking about AJ, what he does, watch it back, what he does, right? He looks to the gods, JP, right? He looks to the gods like he's thanking, he's saying something. He looks really emotional. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's just that, that Canadian thing he's got where he's just like, I think he used to play ice hockey, and he's just like, it's the aggression. So honestly, 2 emotions after the goal that he does.
A word has to be said as well that we made that effort last night, first half included, obviously because of the way we played, on the back of having played probably an unprecedented amount of games in this month. Like, you can't just forget that we've had. I mean, what was Young Boys Bern's calendar like leading up to this? I'm pretty sure it wasn't stacked like ours.
They played 1 game in the same period.
I mean, that could be considered a disadvantage, but in some quarters. But it certainly didn't look like one last night. Like I said, they looked like a limited team. Mm-hmm. They were all massive. Kind of looked a bit like a Livingston with a better manager.
Aye.
But it just didn't. I mean, their number 8 was so determined not to get the better, not to be outplayed by Engels. It was like, if Engels was ever on the ball, you could just see that guy sprinting from wherever else he was in the park. It was like one of those games where you're playing against somebody at fives and they're head and shoulders above you, and you're bursting a gut to
nullify them. Nullify them.
He was effectively trying to nullify him. But I thought Engels was great last night, particularly in the first half. Maybe ran it a bit out of steam, and hopefully whatever knock he picked up, because he was down at the end because he walked right past us and round the Jockstein and back into the dugout, and he got an ovation from every section, which I was pleased about. I think that probably meant a good bit to him.
They kept zooming in on him whilst it was 0-0. They kept zooming in on him, actually, whilst he was in the dugout. After having gone off, as if to say, what could have been and all this kind of stuff. Then we scored a goal. What I was talking about with AJ was it was that kind of ice hockey aggression. Not so much Canadian, but obviously it's massive in Canada. Unbelievable. Watch it back. But the other thing you said about David Martindale, I think that nullification was key to what young boys tried to do last night. They done it also with Kuhn. He was man marked last night. The guy followed him over the pitch last night to the point where he actually switched with Kyogo at one point to see if he could shrug him off. But one final point before you leave us, and your jersey has been noted, the one that's over your shoulder, and I think everybody can figure out why. I'm Man United, albeit with Larsson's name on it. Callum McGregor last night. Callum McGregor. I'm going to put it out there. I think that was maybe his finest 45 minutes in Europe for Celtic, that first half. Honestly, I mean, unbelievable. He was doing things that weren't just about hard work and application. Some of the goal that he sets up and he's penalised for, it's so unfortunate, JP, when you watch it back, because he probably didn't have to kick the player. The player was so off balance. All the weight was on like his heels, right? When he gets kicked, he was not going to be able, and the ball was moving away from him. And Callum's on the front foot at this point. The boy wasn't catching Callum. It's so unfortunate when you watch it. But I was looking at the fact that there's been a lot of focus on the productive time he spent away from Celtic when he went to Notts County and he teams up with Jack Grealish. Right? And Grealish scored last night for Manchester City. I read a report, and I'm not going to name and shame the journalist, dig it out, right? I read a report, I think about 2 weeks ago, talking about how Callum McGregor was heading towards 500 appearances for Celtic, and it listed all his incredible accolades, right? Because he's right up there. By the time he retires, he might be the most decorated Celt of all time, which is incredible. Although you can't say that a League Cup's is the same as a European Cup when we're talking the amount of trophies you've won. But the caveat was, do you just wish, though, that he had made more of his career? Right? And seriously, Scottish journalists wrote the piece, right? And someone will be able to name them in the comments, I'm sure. And what they were talking about was, why has he stayed his entire career at Celtic? Imagine stagnating at Celtic and just scooping up all these awards and all these games. He should have went and tested himself down south. And I used that example.
How many trophies has Ryan Christie won? He's playing well. He's playing every week. He's had some big scalps, had some great moments. Been in at Old Trafford, which clearly isn't hard to do, but hopefully it is hard to do tonight. He's an example of a midfielder who left Celtic at an age where he obviously wanted to go and test himself at a higher level, but he's not won anything.
No.
And Ryan Christie, no disrespect to him, but at the end of his career, he'll point to, I did really well in the Premier League for 4 or 5 seasons.
Like Stuart Armstrong. And the example I'm giving with Grealish is because what Callum McGregor has proven, what Celtic have proven last night, is that is not actually the case, right? So Grealish goes from Notts County on loan back to his parent club. He gets sold for 100 million quid. He's now at Man City, who are languishing below Celtic in the Champions League, possibly not even qualifying for a playoff place. Right, and this is the point. You can stay at Celtic.
Is there an orchestra playing in the distance? Because it feels like that's a kind of...
absolutely. And one of our own Scottish journalists is writing this piece, which is feeding into this idea that we're tin pot and at any opportunity you should leave because you're not going to achieve what you should achieve as a footballer if you stay at Celtic or in Scottish football. Well, Callum McGregor and Celtic are proving that wrong. That's how big last night's performance and result was, JP. I can't overstate it.
We spoke about him last week and said, is it maybe right to leave him out against Kilmarnock so that we can get the best version of Callum McGregor in the game where we really, really need him. And he did both. So, I mean, I think that proves to anybody that's been doubting Callum McGregor, look at that. That's phenomenal. He's played pretty much every single minute of every single game this month, of which we're now at 8. Is that 8 games? We're on the 23rd of January. That's bananas.
It's frightening. It's frightening.
So, I mean, to have that mental strength to get through all those games, yes, okay, the Rangers game stands out as an anomaly where everyone was off it, and that was just their time to have a moment against us, and that's all it was. It was a moment. But to play on Saturday and then on last night, and again, people will point to, there'll be people, I'm sure, listening going, "Oh, it was only young boys Byrne, it wasn't anybody that great or whatever." But there's no easy games in Europe. There is absolutely no easy games in Europe, as was proved last night. They were definitely determined. They're on their third coach. Apparently, this guy that's come in has made a difference, clearly. They're a third coach in a season. They had a lot of rest leading up to the game. They had nothing to lose. And a team like that is so dangerous when they've got nothing to lose, because it's just a case of, we're not, our season doesn't live or die by this game. We've got a hell of a support over there. We want to play for them, which we've been the equivalent of that at times, haven't we? We've been that team that's gone away and had a massive away support and somehow battled to get something, like, I don't know, like the Juventus game under Martin O'Neill, where we nearly got a draw, but for a completely ridiculous penalty given against us, which
Martin wasn't happy about, was he?
And by the way, as a reminder of the Porto thing last night, there was one point where one of their players was down on the edge of their box, and another one of their players walked over, and he was going like that, "Stay down, stay down." And this was before the goal. This was before the goal. I was going mental.
The dark arts.
That was like the Vitor Baia thing when they told him to stay down when he got injured. One of their players came over and was like, "Stay down."
You brought back a memory. By the way, before I tell you the memory about
PTSD.
I know, yeah, it's triggered. What about the young boys fans with the wee Celtic support?
Oh, I saw that. That was great.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What a great travelling support. Big shout out to them. We were at we got all access passes to a 6-a-side tournament in Glasgow, and it was myself and Kevin Graham, and we were walking about. We had access. We could interview anybody. We interviewed everybody that had a connection to Celtic, including Niall Quinn. Asked Niall Quinn about the field Athen ride. Did you really play this to Chris Morris when you were on international duty and all this kind of stuff? And there's Baia. Is it
Vitor Baia.
Vitor Baia. And there he is. I'm like, he's quite a big name. Kev, shall we interview him? No talking to him. No talking to him.
I wouldn't have.
He refused. He refused. He was like, no. I'll get chucked out. If I go over there, I'm going to get chucked out.
Did Kev have us getting beat last night? Is that what?
I don't think so. There was a nervousness about Kev. And what I was trying to say is we are actually a good team. We've shown at this level that we're a good team and we can compete. And if we can show that tonight, this was yesterday, we'll be okay. And I think we showed it for 45. And the second half was a bit scrappier and all the rest of it. But that's understandable. You imagine the energy levels. You're talking about the amount of games we're playing. The energy levels, it was a leveler in the second half, JP. And I think that was the big thing in the second half. But we got through it. And a big shout out to McGregor. And, these people who want to write these puff pieces about Scottish football and Celtic, come on. We can still achieve, as we proved last night. So I'm looking forward to the Villa game. I'm looking forward to seeing who we get in the playoff.
I won't be here next week. I'll be on a train back for Birmingham. So,
brilliant. I love it.
It's the only one that I could go. The other away games this season just were out of my reach. Dortmund, Zagreb, Atalanta. They were just at a bad time for me in terms of work and finance and everything else. So going down next week. So never been to Villa Park before.
Phenomenal, JP. 2,500 strong here. I know. Take another away day off, JP, for your memoirs. Once you finally hang up your boots, and once you've done your musical memoir. We haven't even spoken about music today. No, but listen, 2,500. There is a buzz about the place, as Paul McStay maybe would have said, and hopefully that continues and you enjoy it and lap it up, because it's a great achievement what Celtic have done. And I just hope that we can follow it up, and that's why we've been talking about Kieran Tierney and Kyogo and Jota and the situation there. We need to build on this, and obviously we can do that. And hopefully, you just never know what might happen in the playoff, JP. It's the old school two-legged affair. Who knows what might happen from there? There's some teams that I would rather play in that middle section than others. Hopefully that's kind to us as well. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. If you want to come along and see us live a week tonight, we're going to be with John Hartson in Gracie's. There are currently 33 tickets available. So if you want to come along, the ticket link is under the video. All that's left for me. Stay safe next week, JP, and thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.